Christ is risen. Today we'll be reading the Gospel for the sixth Sunday after Pascha, the Sunday of the blind man. And the Gospel is from John chapter 9, verses 1 to 38. And because it's such a long Gospel and there's such a long commentary from the blessed Theophylact, we're only going to focus in on two of the verses of the Gospel to read from Theophylact. But let's first begin and read the whole Gospel and then read those verses and the commentary from the blessed Theophylact. So, the Gospel for the sixth Sunday after Pascha. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Therefore the neighbors and those who previously had seen that he was blind said, Is not this he who sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. He said, I am he. Therefore they said to him, How were your eyes opened? He answered and said, A man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and I received sight. Then they said to him, Where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also asked him again how he had received his sight. He said to them, He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Therefore some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath. Others said, How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was a division among them. They said to the blind man again, What do you say about him because he opened your eyes? He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him who had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But by what means he now sees we do not know, or who opened his eyes we do not know. He is of age, ask him. He will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that he was Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, He is of age, ask him. So they again called the man who was blind and said to him, Give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see. Then they said to him again, What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Then they reviled him and said, You are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, Why, this is a marvelous thing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he has opened my eyes. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshipper of God and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered and said to him, You are completely born in sins, and are you teaching us? And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said to him, Do you believe in the Son of God? He answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in you? And Jesus said to him, You have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you. Then he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. So this is the gospel for the sixth Sunday. And again, because it's such a long gospel and there's such a long commentary from the blessed Theophylact, we'll only focus on verses 6 and 7. And those verses are that when he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. And the blessed Theophylact comments on these verses by saying, When he had thus spoken, Jesus did not stop with words, but at once added the deed. He spat on the ground, and having made clay, he anointed the eyes of the blind man. By using the clay, the Lord showed that it was he who formed Adam out of clay. Earlier he announced in so many words, I am he who formed Adam, offending his listeners. Now he demonstrates with an irrefutable deed the truth of that proclamation. Jesus created eyes for the blind man out of clay, just as he had done for Adam. He did not merely fashion the eyes or open them, but gave them vision. This proves that it was he who breathed the soul into Adam. Without the soul being present to impart its divine energy, even a perfectly formed eye would see nothing. Christ used spittle to make him see, because he was about to send the blind man to the pool of Siloam and wanted to make clear that he, not the water of that spring, was the source of the miracle. Let us learn that he fashioned and opened the man's eyes by the power which proceeds from his mouth. That is why he spat on the ground to make clay. Then, lest anyone imagine that the source of the miracle was the earth, he ordered the man to wash off the clay. Some say that the clay was not removed, but was fashioned into eyes. Why does he command him to go to the pool of Siloam? First, that we may learn of the blind man's faith and obedience. He did not reason, if the clay and the spittle will give me eyes, why must I wash in the pool of Siloam? But obeyed the one who commanded. Second, with this order the Lord confounds the Jews who willfully rejected him. It is likely that many saw him anoint the man's eyes with clay and paid close attention to what he was doing. As a result, no one could later dispute that the Lord had done these things. Third, by sending the blind man to the pool of Siloam, Christ shows that he is not an opponent of the Old Testament. And why does the evangelist add the interpretation of the word Siloam? So that you might learn that the pool of Siloam is a figure of Christ, and that it was Christ who healed the man there. Just as Christ is the spiritual rock, so is he the spiritual Siloam. As the gush of the spring of Siloam was fearful in its strength, so too the advent of the Lord, hidden and unknown to the angels, overwhelmed all sin by its power. So this is the gospel for the sixth Sunday after Pascha. Christ is risen.